it's just really so important to understand we are not alone. And there are a lot of other people, good people, who are working on this, and they've got our backs, and together we can do this work. And we know that when we have connections. It's easy to forget it when we don't.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Voices from the Field. I'm NCAT Communications Director Emilie Ritter Saunders, based in Montana, and have the pleasure of welcoming NCAT Regenerative Grazing Specialist Linda Poole to the show. Linda is a sheep rancher in north central Montana and has spent the last several months getting NCAT ready to relaunch the Soil for Water project for farmers, ranchers, and land managers in all 50 states. We have so much to cover in this episode. Welcome, Linda. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Emilie. I'm pretty excited to be able to talk about this wonderful project.
So, Linda, NCAT's Soil for Water project really started as this quiet pilot effort with just a couple dozen Texas ranches back in 2015. And just last year, we expanded to include ranchers in 8 states. And then just recently, we flung the doors wide open to include farmers, ranchers, and land managers all across the country. What is the Soil for Water project, and why should folks start paying attention?
Yeah, it's such an exciting project, Emilie. This is kind of a capstone program for myself and for NCAT in thinking about how to meet the challenges that we face as a nation and as a world right now moving forward. How do we surmount the climate challenges in front of us, the economic turmoil, the problems with being able to have safe, sustainable food and fiber for our families, and at the same time be able to do this in a way that is respectful for the changes we're seeing in our society. So Soil for Water is a free, voluntary, partnership-based program for farmers, ranchers, and foresters who want to launch into or are already doing land management practices that improve soil biology. When we do that, we can catch and hold more water in the soil, and that has a whole compounding cascade of positive benefits. And so this program is nationwide. And one of the things that I think that kind of sets us on a course for success with this is, even though it's a nationwide program, this is not a one-size-fits-all recipe. We recognize that each place is different, and we recognize that this is a space where we have much to learn from each other. And so the Soil for Water program is really based on peer-to-peer learning, respectful relationships, and ways to capture that learning to help us build the better world that we all care about. And that's why I really hope that we'll have a lot of engagement across the country from a lot of different producers, technical service providers, and other NGOs and government agencies who share our commitment to building a better, more sustainable agricultural system for the U.S.
When you talk about, drought and catching and holding more water in the soil, I think about the headline that we all woke up to today or recently about the Western mega drought. And, that's really what this project was born out of in Texas. But to see that headline today that scientists are now saying, particularly out here in the West, mega drought is the worst it's been in 1,200 years. How does catching and holding more water in the soil help combat that, or help be sort of the antidote to what many producers are facing, particularly in the Western United States?
Yeah, good question, Emilie, and one that consumes a lot of our minds. And it's even worse in some ways than just thinking about it's the worst drought, because on the flip side, we have some of the most catastrophic floods, hurricanes, tornadoes that we've seen. It's happening more often. It's like the weather has become a drama queen where it can't do anything in a moderate, gentle way. It has to just fling stuff at us. So how do we build a buffer? How do we come up with a way of being resilient to whatever changes there are? And with us here in Montana and throughout the Southwest, it is drought. The lovely thing about this is that the solution for drought and for flood and for fire and for water quality concerns, so many of these different things, there's this elegant solution, which is called improving our soil biology, coming up with ways that we can enhance the health of our soils, the diversity of our landscapes, these ideas that help us on a day-to-day basis build more resilience, profitability into our operations, at the same time done in an adaptive, measured way, can help us find ways to catch and hold more water in the soil. One way to get through drought is to be able to catch all the water that you get whenever it comes. And so as we're trying to come up with better cropping systems for the food that we produce as row crops, or whether we're trying to get more pounds of gain on our beef or our sheep, as we're doing this, the same principles that allow us to do that allow us to build the soil organic matter, to build the life in the soils that then allow the soil to form aggregates that allow more water to infiltrate, more air to move through the soils, and allows that microbial community that is the basis of all the life in the soil to flourish. And it's more important now than ever. And the good news is that there are so many people who are putting this in the forefront of their efforts right now, brilliant scientists, combined with what we can learn from traditional ecological wisdom, going back to things like the Hopi Nation, who have been raising corn on some of the very same acres for thousands of years. Talk about a sustainable system. So the idea of being able to deal with catastrophes like flood and drought could be really daunting if we didn't have the understanding that our management of our land and our soils, and by using adaptive management, gives us the tools to be resilient in the face of all the challenges that are around the corner for us.
Well, and I would imagine too, these things are daunting if you're trying to go it on your own. And you mentioned that Soil for Water is a free and voluntary effort. What is it about creating a network or creating this community that's both enticing to land managers and farmers and ranchers, but can also start to move the needle when it comes to capturing more water in the soil?
Yeah, this is probably a little bit of an unexpected answer, but I think that, as at least my experience as a rancher, having done this type of work for 40 years and started on a ranch as a kid too, 20 years before that, it is really easy to isolate, and it's really easy to feel as if, if you read some articles, everybody in ag is a villain. We're the ones who are creating the climate crisis. We're the ones who are producing trash food. If you read our industry magazines, it's easy to feel like we are victims. The Endangered Species Act is going to put us out of business, or heavy-handed government programs are going to be the end of our tradition, our lifestyle, our families. And I think what's important about the approach that Soil for Water and so many people in regenerative ag are taking is that we're not going to be victims, and we're not going to be villains. I'm sorry, this is important stuff to me. We can be heroes. And this is so essential, because if what we do is approach the challenge of building healthy soils from the viewpoint of just trying to get by, just trying to fix up our, fix up our reputation, in the people who might buy our food, we're not going to get there. What we need to do is we need to recognize that there is hope here. There's an epidemic of suicide in the agricultural community, and it's touched my life recently. And I would say that the most important thing about Soil for Water and approaches like this is that it gives us hope. It gives us ideas. It gives us connections. And together we can make the difference that we need to make. And we can see ourselves as problem solvers, not as victims. And we can help be the solution to the problems that are in front of us, instead of feeling like we are, that we're the bad guys. And I think that is so important.
Thanks, Linda. And I know, your passion for this absolutely comes through your voice, and for folks listening, that passion that's there is something that can be harnessed, right? And talking about some of the ways that we are trying to build this community, to build the Soil for Water network, and the tools by which we are working really hard to make these connections so that folks aren't isolated, that they can come together and develop solutions with one another, and have that sense of hope, as you mentioned. And that's something I really want to learn more about in this conversation, are some of those new tools that you've really had a hand in developing to connect people. At soilforwater.org, finding the stories of regeneration, of best practices when it comes to things like soil monitoring. That's all at the website. But tell me about some of the new tools that are there that are really going to allow people to make these connections and connect with folks all over the country that maybe they wouldn't have had the chance to meet otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the most exciting things that we're doing right now with Soil for Water. We had kind of proof of concept of the Soil for Water approach of building resilience and capturing water in our soils, and having that be the basis of moving forward in a positive way as an agricultural community. But that what we learned there was that there's such a diversity of people. We learn in different ways, we engage in different ways. Some of us like to meet in person and do a pasture walk. Some of us like to watch webinars. Some of us like to chat. And so our Soil for Water team, kind of a moving team of really wonderful people who've been working on this. It's an ongoing project, but we looked at all the different ways that people might want to connect, and came up with continuing some of the things that NCAT, our mothership, has always done, as we're working to build resilience in local communities and being able to protect natural resources. So some of the things that we've always done are workshops and webinars. We have a lot of publications on how to, little technical guides and tip guides. We have technical assistance that we offer over the phone, through emails, a lot of ways to connect with us. But we realized that a lot of people want to be part of a more active, interactive, immediate way to communicate. So we came up with the idea of the forum. At Soil for Water, you can see our forum that's there, and it's new. We're just getting started with it, but it's a wonderful way for people to be able to go in and ask a question, post a picture. Hey, here's something cool that I did. Say, have you seen this webinar? I think it's fantastic. Or, ooh, I just had a bad experience and I wonder if anyone else did. Is there some way I can solve this? So the forum is open 24/7. It's completely free. You can be as anonymous or as famous as you want to be as you're in there. We encourage not just farmers, ranchers, and foresters to be in there, but we would love to see partner groups use this as a way to connect with their communities and connect their communities out to ever larger ones. The solutions to the challenges in front of us are all about building respectful, reciprocal relationships. And the forum is one way to do that. So I'm pretty excited about that as a way to engage. We're just getting started, but there's forums in the UK. There's one I love called the Farming Forum. And, there are thousands of posts on there a day where it turns out to be something that, a rancher goes out and he has to pull a calf, and he comes in and he drinks a cup of coffee and he connects with his pals about, hey, I just did this and what's going on with your day. And they get to telling jokes. And I hope someday the forum will do that. We also have the Atlas of Regenerative, the Regenerators Atlas of America, we're calling it. And that is a map-based system where commercial producers can plant their flag. So you can go in there and fill out a very simple sign-up form, takes less than 5 minutes, and put a picture in there, and your information goes up onto this atlas, and it's a way to advertise what you have to sell. It's a way to connect with other people who have practices that might be similar to what you're doing. It's completely interactive and searchable, and it's got these really cool layers for those of us in ag who are geeks about plant hardiness zones and ecoregions and watersheds. You can fiddle around with that. You have an option in the forum to direct message anybody who is in the forum. We are encouraging people to sign up for both the forum and the atlas, because then you would be able to reach out without having to actually exchange your email address. If you feel a little cautious about that, you can message one another through the forum and build some relationships. And that's what the atlas is about. The other thing about the Atlas that we're really excited about is that Soil for Water recognizes that a lot of us are inspired and informed primarily by stories, by learning what other people are doing, what challenges they faced, how they've surmounted them, funny things that happened. And the Atlas has little badges at the top of the flags, the pop-ups that are for each farm and ranch. And there's an opportunity there to put up your farm or ranch story and let people see what you're doing. Another way to build that connection. And then the third piece that we've talked about just a little bit tangentially that we have is our network. And it's restricted to just commercial farmers, ranchers, and foresters who want to be working on regenerative ag. And there are some really nice discounts on some things that might be of value to people who are getting into this regenerative ag work. There's a nice discount on some soil health testing, on an app to do grazing management. There'll be different webinars and training programs that will be offered to network members. And one example of that right now is that we have our upcoming Soil Health Innovation Conference on March 15 and 16. And I think it's $40 for people to attend, except if you are a Soil for Water Network member, you can attend for free. So I really encourage the listeners to look into all of these opportunities, and we'd love to engage with you through these online applications and programs.
So I'll pause right there, and in case folks have missed the URL or where they can find the forum, the atlas, the stories, related news and things that we're posting to that website. It's soilforwater.org, and we would love to meet all of you on that website. Linda, particularly as a rancher in a remote place, you're up in north central Montana. Why is it important to you to be able to make these kinds of connections with people from all over the country?
Yeah, it's another good question, Emily. I think to one of the people who's in our network here locally, and he will be a person that people might know through the video, the Soil for Water video. His name's Dusty Emond. And one of the things that we've talked about is once we get excited about doing regenerative agriculture, and as we are facing down these huge challenges, we got 4 inches of precip last year up here. That's a third of what we should get. And who knows when we're ever going to get any precip. As Dusty said, one of the challenges is we want to try a lot of different things because we can learn from the atlas and the forum and from reading and from attending all these webinars put on by excellent groups. We can get a lot of ideas of what we want to try, but you can go broke trying too many things. And so one idea would be to have kind of like little regional hubs, and the people in those hubs would sit down together and decide what are some of the most likely things that could help us catch and hold more water in our soil. It might be that we try some silvopasture. It might be that we do something a little different with our grazing. It might be that we do compost applications on our rangelands. It could be any of these things. And what we realized is, wouldn't it be helpful if each of us only had to do one or two, and we set it up in a really smart way, capturing the information that we have from the scientists who know how to do monitoring and adaptive management, so we can up our learning rate. It's like it's like having the benefit of all these wrinkles but still being young, having the wisdom but acquiring it more quickly, and doing that by connecting to others. And so that's just us in Phillips County, Montana, talking about that. But think about the power and the hope and the wisdom that you can build if we're connected all over like that. And so everybody who is looking at compost applications to boost water holding capacity, they could all be talking through the forum, through the network. They can be identified through the atlas. And that's why it's really important to me that we can build these connections, because we want to learn together and we want to support one another. The other piece of this is sometimes at the end of a hard day, it's just really so important to understand we are not alone. And there are a lot of other people, good people, who are working on this, and they've got our backs, and together we can do this work. And we know that when we have connections. It's easy to forget it when we don't.
We'll talk a lot more about the film here in a few minutes, and introduce folks to Dusty in that film as well. And, talking about just regenerating ranch and farmland by keeping more water in the soil, that is the primary focus of Soil for Water, and building this community and showing how ranchers and farmers can deploy regenerative practices, but also running a profitable business at the same time. Have you found that it's become more practical to achieve both, or the perception is starting to shift that yes, it's practical to achieve both of those things?
Yeah, that makes me think about I think it was a Wendell Berry quote from long ago, and it was something along the lines of, let's see, in order to save the land, you must save the people. Without both, you have neither. And it's the same thing about building profitable businesses and building soil health on a grand scale. If we can't be profitable while we do it, it's not going to happen. And the good news is that they roll together and they're synergistic. I was just at the Montana Soil Health Symposium in Billings, Montana last week, and Dan Kittredge was there from the Bionutrient Food Association, and he made an excellent point. And that's profitability can be increased more than one way. One way is that you get a higher price for the food that you raise. And some of us, I at least, kind of have a problem with that. yeah, I need better profit, but I want my lamb and my fiber to be affordable to most people. I don't want it to be a luxury item. I want it to be available. So I don't want a higher price point, but what we do when we employ the soil health principles in an effective way is we drop the cost of production. And that's like the best of both worlds, because we can have a higher profit margin, we can improve our soils, and at the same time, we can make sure that nutrient dense food and high quality fiber are affordable for most of the people who are around us, instead of turning it into some type of a luxury item.
That's such a great point, maintaining that accessibility for folks all over the country to be able to have healthy, grass-fed beef, or to be able to wear the beautiful merino wool sweater that they see at the store. So to date, 124 people have joined the Soil for Water Network. We're seeing folks sign up from all over the country. Among the original members from that group of Texas trials that we mentioned earlier in the episode are Tina and Orion Weldon. And this pair of ranchers are featured in our newly premiered Soil for Water short film. And really what struck me most about their story, and others that we've interviewed and spoken with for the production of this film, is the optimism and the passion for regenerative grazing, and specifically that impact of catching and keeping more water in the soil. So let's take a quick pause here and listen to a short clip from the film.
By using common sense practices like managed grazing systems, frequent crop rotations, livestock and plant diversification, and building soil biology, ground cover thrives and soil health improves.
The effects of restoring the soil, then the plants above it, then the primary consumers, and then predators, has happened in this field before our eyes over the last 2 years.
So that was a clip from the new Soil for Water short film, which you can watch now at soilforwater.org. And Linda, part of the film was shot in your community in north central Montana, adjacent to the spectacular Missouri River breaks. Thank you again for guiding our crew across the Montana plains on a hot and smoky summer morning. I think we started at 4 a.m. And so as people see this film and connect with farmers and ranchers like yourself, like the Weldons, like the Veseths, like Dusty Emond, who you mentioned, what is it that you hope people really can take away from the story?
Well, here I am saying the word again. It's hope. In that film, Dale Veseth makes the point that no matter what we face, no matter how bad the drought is, there are things that we can do as land managers to improve our resilience, to improve our ability to withstand the challenges that are in front of us. So I think that that's important. I think it's important to, one of the messages to me as I look at the film, as if I wasn't, as if I was seeing it for the first time, is the understanding that there are principles that underlie regenerative agriculture that will work no matter where we are. And you don't have to have like the special recipe for the Piedmont area, or the special recipe for the Chihuahuan Desert, or, what do you do when you're up against the Canadian border in Montana, like I am. I think it's so heartening to find that there are kind of like these timeless principles that we can all use. It's within our reach to understand these things. We don't have to have a PhD. We don't have to be rich. It's something that we can all do. It's something that we can all take one next logical step. And we're not alone as we do it. There is a groundswell of people doing this work. And I have to say that one of the reasons I think it's happening is because what we find is what you talked about before, Emilie, and that's this passion, this optimism, this excitement. There was a study done in South Dakota a few years ago where they talked to 100 farmers and ranchers. And these are all people who are facing the same situation with weather catastrophes and the problems in global markets and the pandemic and all these different things. And one of the things that really struck me out of that is when they asked traditional ranchers and farmers versus those who are practicing regenerative agriculture, what's your level of optimism for the future? How do you, how are things going to be going for you in the future? Do you have a future in agriculture? These are people that in all other ways were exactly the same, but some of them are doing regenerative agriculture, and those people were 20% more optimistic. Not by having any outcomes, just because we are engaging in this idea of learning and connection and relationship. And there's something that's so fulfilling about moving forward with curiosity and compassion and building those relationships. And to me, that's the story of Soil for Water.
And I love, Linda, how you talk about accessibility, right? That you don't have to have a PhD, you don't have to be wealthy. And Soil for Water is really creating a community and doing what NCAT does best, connecting people with trusted and practical resources that are accessible to anyone. And, we also should say that this effort and what we're doing with Soil for Water wouldn't be possible without early funders like the Dixon Water Foundation and the Meadows Foundation, the Jacob and Therese Hershey Foundation. And of course, we've been able to expand this effort thanks to the Southern Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Foundation, the NRCS, and NCAT's very own Hadley Innovation Fund. Linda, what really is your vision of the Soil for Water community as this effort continues to grow?
That makes me, to me, it's all about building community and respectful relationships that heal our communities and our landscapes. And in my mind, I think in pictures. It's just the way I've always been. I think in analogies. And a lot of us who dive deep into regenerative agriculture realize that life hinges on soil biology, and that hinges on countless relationships between, diverse life forms, more than we could ever imagine. But chief among these relationships, these movers and shakers that make soil work, are mycorrhizal fungi. And these little fungi send out astonishing long hyphae, like tiny little root hair type things, and they can go for yards, miles. They connect. They're these tiny little fragile connections that transport nutrients and move water. They work through symbiosis, mutually beneficial relationships that link the plants with the soil. The plants capture the sun. The plants feed their sugars down into the ground. The mycorrhizal fungi, the hyphae, transport these nutrients around. And I hope you can see it's this incredible web, Emilie. It's this idea that symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationships are what create healthy soil. And I think that that's what Soil for Water is trying to do with human relationships. We're trying to be those connectors. We are trying to move information back and forth and move resources around so that all life can thrive. And a big part of that is saying thank you to the people who fund us. Deep gratitude there. Also, thank you and an invitation to the many partners who are working on this. Soil for Water is not the only group doing this. We're not the first, we're not the only. And what we recognize is that this is no time to be in a turf battle about who does what where. Our idea is to be like those hyphae and move information around in all sorts of good places. I think about the Quivira Coalition. To me, has been transformational in how I think about doing work. Mad Agriculture out of Boulder, Colorado is thinking about ways to engage not just the traditional large-scale agriculture, but to have ways that work with smaller scale, family scale, underserved people. And that's where NCAT lives too. That's what we want to do. So it's a good thing this is a podcast. You can't see me waving my arms all around, but what my vision is for Soil for Water is that we can be like those hyphae out there and help people connect up in ways that make a difference to people one at a time, but to the world as a whole too, by catching and holding more water in the soil and by creating these wonderful relationships between the people who feed us and clothe us in commercial agriculture.
Linda, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you this morning. Thank you. And thank you for helping to really illustrate what Soil for Water is and why it's of value, or why we believe it's of value to farmers, ranchers, land managers, foresters all over the country. I'm NCAT Communications Director Emilie Ritter Saunders, and like I said, I've been speaking with regenerative grazing specialist Linda Poole. As soon as you're done listening to this episode of Voices from the Field, we hope you can connect with us over at soilforwater.org. Linda, thanks so much.
Thank you, Emilie.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at atra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.